Hi, my name is Guy Lawrence and thanks for tuning into my podcast today. If you're enjoying these conversations and you want to check out more of this transformational work, be sure to come back to guylawrence.com.au and join me as we go further down the rabbit hole. Enjoy the show. Patrick, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you. Welcome yourself. Happy to be here.
You know, we've been having many conversations over the last few years since we've got to know each other, and I thought it's about time we actually shared one of those conversations to the rest of the planet through a podcast. So I have no doubt it'll be beautiful today, mate. And I ask everyone when they jump on the show, if a complete stranger stopped you on the street and asked you what you did for a living, what would you say?
I support people in transforming patterns that aren't working or aren't working very well into patterns that work a little better.
Beautiful. And the next question I would ask if I was that stranger properly as well, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's good. You know, in general, there's a process that I've found over the years that is helping others and myself to go from mostly living in their heads to living in a combination of their body communicating and their head being kind of a good interpreter of the language of the body. And I think so often the answers to patterns that aren't working as well as they could, or patterns that flat out aren't working at all, lies in listening to your body. And that your body communicates in feelings and sensation. And sensation and feelings are different, right? Feelings, emotion, those are really tied together. And then sensation, meaning tight contraction and relief and relaxation. And often this sensation piece, because I find that we as people can get caught up in, I'm more of a feeling person, or I'm more of a thinker, I'm more of an intellect, or I'm more of an emotive. And I think that the place where all of those things kind of meet is in the body in the form of tension or relief. And that whether you're an emotive person or if you're an intellectual person, in most of those cases, if you come across a aha moment or a solution, you feel relief. Emotionally led you there or intellectually led you there. The body's sensation of tight or loose is a good indication of, am I on the right track?
Beautiful. Why, and I speak from my own experience here, so I don't want to like blanket statement everyone in the same place, but it was the last place I looked in my life was within myself and the body, you know, and having that communication for such a long time. From your experience, is that the case with many people, and why do you think that is?
Well, I think that it's a lot of people. I think that in our the pace of life for, call it, city dwellers, is not the pace of the body. It's the pace of the mind. And it's not the pace of nature. It's the pace of innovation. And when you look at the way that nature nature generally innovates generationally, meaning a pattern that of life, death, life, death, life, death, life, death, life, death. Oh, you have a slight change in the physical form, or in the way that the brain function works, or coloring, or whatever, in a species or an animal. But relatively speaking, it's over a long period of time. And the life of the cities and the way that we've had to innovate by pulling us up, kind of out of that equation of the regular pace of evolution, we've pulled ourselves out of that. We've dominated the natural pace and environment to such a degree that innovation has had to keep going faster and faster and faster and faster and faster to keep us on top of what, in my opinion, is kind of a failing model. And so it's kind of like, you know, I'm not a bird. I've just jumped off of a cliff and I'm moving my arms, see, just like a bird. And everybody just says, well, just flap harder. And it's like, well, yeah, but no matter how hard I flap, I'm still not going to break free into flight. This is a model that will not work if I keep moving this fast. It's just not sustainable if maintaining equilibrium on the planet is a goal, part of the goal. And so I think that we get caught here. I get caught here. You get caught here. People get caught here because we're moving so fast, and the body communicates quietly and in slow moments, in moments where we've slowed down. And it's one of the reasons that yoga has been such a draw for me over the years, is that people that do a yoga practice and they're laying there in corpse pose, and you know, corpse pose is the practice of little death. And so, you know, in that sense, this process of practicing a little death means that you know, it's those moments pre-death that people really review and take a look. How did I spend my time? How could I have spent my time? And there's a chance to feel in ways that you're not feeling because you're going so fast all the time. And so I think, in answer to your question, a roundabout way, the pace of life for most people, we're just in this pattern of survive. You know, survive the pace of life. And you'll reflect on your life after you've slowed down and retired. Yeah. And so I think that, you know, yoga is something that by its very nature, it ends with you laying on your back with your eyes closed, breathing deeply. And for many people, that's the only time they do that, except for when they're going to sleep.
Yeah, it's huge, isn't it? I mean, I love the way you broke that down, because, again, thinking about myself, once I started to reconnect that relationship with myself and my body, and the slowing down and the listening and becoming more familiar with the sensations and the emotions, it's now literally the first place I go before I go outside of myself, where the old me, or the older version of me that's always transforming and changing, would literally be reaching outside of myself constantly to try and fix what I deem to fix an internal thing, you know, and I realized I had it ass backwards for a long time. And in that slowing down, the joy started to come out within me without the external need to find the joy, to stimulate the joy within.
Wow.
It's been huge.
I really, just to comment on that, I think that's a very insightful statement that I don't want to have us miss. Is, you know, you might hear meditators or different inspired personalities over the years say that the natural state of human is a state of joy, and I think that is even hard to contemplate from the perspective of outside in. Because as long as we're looking to be joyful from the outside in, it will be something that is chasing. We are chasing. And it's when we shift, when one has the opportunity to shift and slow down and recognize that it is in the quiet, the soft, the slow, the pause, that joy comes out of me. And our natural state of being is much slower, much softer, much more in pause, much when survival isn't the goal. We realize that we need much less. And I think that's one of the big benefits and gifts of COVID and the sheltering in place that's happening in so many places, in so many countries, and so many places, is you know, hopefully getting back to, in the same way that I have, you know, spending time with my kids, spending time with my wife on a daily basis. I'm seeing them so much more, and it's joyful.
Beautiful, man. I got to ask you as well, Patrick, 'cause we're probably a similar age, right? And you've been involved in this work a long time, and the depth of your knowledge and experience, like it amazes me every time I speak to you. I feel like I'm learning something new. And for me, I was such a late starter to a degree in my 30s before I even was aware. Like I grew up in Wales. It was beer and rugby, basically, and you know,
They're
I was,
enlightened. Therein is your enlightenment in one way, my man, because those are beautiful things.
and I just had no concept. I didn't even grow up in a religion, nothing. It was just so far
Right.
removed from my paradigm. And I'm just curious for you, like where did it start? Did you grow up in this kind of environment, or was there a realization or a tipping point for you?
You know, I had always just been really curious, and you know, plant medicine has been a part of my life, and you know, for many years, cannabis was the vehicle that really, when I would use plants like plant medicine or mushrooms or ayahuasca. What I notice is this experience of feeling a part of something that's bigger than myself, and that cannabis is has in the past served me in just softening the edges of my perception. So it's kind of like if I just kind of get a little blurred, I rest more into my sensation state of my body, and it just caused me to keep looking. Like, wow, okay, this plant causes me to have different perspectives, or unlocks perspectives that I always have that I just don't access as often, and creativity comes out in a different way, and I rhyme instead of just talking. Now, wow, what causes me to access that, and just really looking at the way that you know, sugar has an effect on me that's different than you know, when I'm not eating a bunch of sugar. Plant medicines have an effect on me that's different from alcohol, which of course alcohol is sugar. And so there's certain kind of like, which inebriation states are you chasing that lead to different mental processes. And alcohol is emotional and reactive. And so is rugby, you know, and so are most sports. And so mostly when we get into our bodies, and this goes back to our previous question and conversation, is mostly when we're getting into our bodies, we're getting into things that have us be reactive, right? Where you're boxing, you're playing rugby, you're playing soccer, you're playing tennis. You know, it's all about how quick can I react and move and perform at this high level. And so where competition is at stake, alcohol and sugar is a perfect match in mentality. And I think transformation and curiosity and plant medicine are at a very very clearly connected. And I've had both in my life, but I've never been as attracted to alcohol as I have been to plants. And I played rugby in college, by the way, too. So I love banging into other people and winning and competing and all that. So, and putting pubic hairs in the competitors' beers after the match. I don't know. Is that a tradition over in Australia?
Not so. I mean, my rugby was in Wales, but there were definitely certain antics that went on after every game. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
That's for sure. It made me grow up. It made me grow up fast. But it sounds like, you know, there was always a greater awareness of something, because quite often I just didn't have. Well, I didn't know how to evolve my awareness to start to grow the depth of myself, which seems like you were always on that lane from an early age. When did you
Yeah.
when did you start to then look at yoga as well then?
So when I was 20, I went to a yoga class with my mom when I was back visiting from college, and it was a beautiful female instructor, and she paid attention to me. And afterwards, I felt great in my body, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And she was my teacher. Like, I just want to do that again. You know, it was a bunch of Pavlovian responses, and then I went up to the university, and you know, I needed to take I can't remember. I think maybe it was just part of your prereqs that you had to take a phys ed course. And I played basketball and rugby and all sorts of, you know, competitive stuff. And somebody told me I should try the yoga for sports performance. And so I went again and again. It was a very attractive female instructor. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so I really, really kind of fell in love with it there. And it just helped. One of the main things that yoga helped that was unexpected is proprioception. And proprioception is knowing where your body is in space when you can't see it. And so as an athlete, I didn't really put together how valuable that could be when I'm playing basketball or rugby or whatever, to know where, to be more intimately aware of where my body is in space when I can't see it. And both my basketball game and rugby game just went to another level from it. So I was hooked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. And so what I'm fascinated as well, Patrick, is that, you know, you're living a life on purpose. You know, you're very aligned with your heart and your mind and your body and your soul, and you're making a difference in the world. Did you, in those 20s from yoga, because I see that a lot with people trying to find this transition, they might have a corporate job or they might be doing something, and as they lean into this work, there's a bigger part of themselves that wants to come through that could be completely different to the career they're on or what they're doing, and want to create a transition themselves. For you,
Yeah.
did you have to make that transition, or were you always kind of just leaning in from your curiosity, so you're always on kind of purpose to what you've created today?
It's a great question. I think for me, I've always until I found yoga and considered it as to be a teacher, I had if then jobs, which would be I consider an if then job, meaning if I got no vacation, would I still want to do this job? And if not, then chances are it's an if-then job. It's like, if this job makes me money, then I'll be able to do what I want with my time. And so I'd always been an entrepreneur and started many different companies, probably 25 over my life. And my main ones have been, but none of them have worked, except for the one that was the end in itself. Right? The one that wasn't an if-then job is the only one that I've had over the last 20 years. And that's been yoga studio owner and yoga teacher. And because they're totally complete. Money was never the point. And so it always gave me all the money that I needed. It hasn't made me rich, whatever rich is. I don't have a ton of disposable income, but I haven't needed it. It's that idea that the innate state of human being is joy. When doing something, when you're toiling for something that is of who you are. And joy is not the case if you're doing something that isn't who you are. And so I had always had if-then jobs that were like, I'll make a lot of money doing this, and then I'm going to do great stuff for the world, for myself. I'm going to eat healthy then. You know, I'm going to prioritize these things then. All these if-then type of tasks. And I did yoga, and so I introduced my ex-wife to yoga, and she's a Parisian, and she started practicing 7-8 times a week. And she came home one day and she's like, I know what I want to do. I want to be a yoga teacher. And I was like, that's great. That's awesome. And she said the teacher training is 9 weeks long. And I said, that's amazing. And this is paraphrasing, but I said, essentially, we were having a hard time. I said, please use this time to connect with yourself and decide if you really want to stay married. And she said, I will. And so she went to the training and she came back and we were sitting in a park and she was explaining to me all of the things that she got out of it, this incredible, transformation that she went through. And she said, and I realized that I don't want to be married anymore. And I said, oh, I love you so much. I love you enough for you to leave if that's what's best. And I said, and I want everything that you got. And I literally sold my business in 30 days, signed the paperwork, got on a plane, and took the training that she just took like a month and a half later.
Wow.
And I knew at that moment that was not an if-then career path. That was a now type of job. It's complete.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. What would you say to someone or to listeners listening to this? And I know it's hard to be specific, but if they're in an if-then job, like from all your experience of moving from finding this purpose, like you say, and being in this state of joy more often, what would you say to someone that's feeling stuck or lacking purpose or just wishing they Monday to Friday away? Because it's common.
It is common. Yeah. And I think that the word I want to unpack the word purpose, because where I come from now is that everything is practice for one day when we leave the body, and that every relationship is a death practice. Every morning that we wake up and we do what we do and we lay down to go to bed is a death practice. COVID is a death practice, right? There's so many things that we used to take for granted that died for a period of time, and some of them will resurrect, but other things may not, right? Mm-hmm. We may not have, and this of course is unique to each person, but not everybody is going to go back to a culture of hugging everyone they see. They're just not going to do it based on all the things. Like, do they want me to hug them? Do I want to hug them? I don't know. I like hugging, but how do they feel? Right? So there's a death there. There's literally is a pattern death. And so given that death is something that will happen for everyone, and it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of like the deal, right? Like there's birth, and then there's death, and then there's the time in between. And purpose has always been sold, and in particular, even going back to this idea of becoming a yoga studio, the idea of purpose wasn't part of it. What was part of it was, I feel better when I'm doing this, so I'm going to follow that. Mm-hmm. And that this idea of living a life without regrets is a life that one day you will die well from. Because if you are doing something that is you, you'll die well. Every day is a good day to die if you're doing you. If you're being as close to who you think you need or should or want to be, you could die. You could die without regrets. That's my projection, right? And so the way that I look at purpose today is that it's a short phrase that kind of encompasses it, and it's, your purpose is your next natural, stress relieving thought, word, or action now. And what that does is it takes this idea that purpose is this thing that's like, for the next 50 years, I've found it. Especially in this time where things are changing so fast, right? 12 weeks ago, we couldn't have imagined being on lockdown. That's how quickly something can change today. Globally, not just in a single place. Like you could in the past say, they're closing Sydney because of this thing. But now all of a sudden it's like the whole globe shut down in like weeks. It all occurred. So big shifts can happen really quick. So the idea of planning for the next 5 years, the next year, the next 10 years, like those are very hard things to do. So to me, my purpose, as often as I can remember it, is what would feel natural, and that's everybody's interpretation, stress relieving. Because I believe that stress relief is a sign that we're headed towards health. If stress is unhealthy, not all stress, right? Obviously, right? There's stress in our body just standing here. Like I lift my arms and I feel stress muscularly and the tension and so forth. So that's positive. But the idea that we hold on to stress and we don't let it go, that causes dis-ease and ultimately sickness. And so natural stress relieving thought, because that's the base level of manifestation, thinking more in alignment. If I find myself beating myself up, I notice that that is stress inducing. Okay, I must have to think differently about myself. Okay, well, you're not so bad. That's a little bit less stress. You know, you're pretty all right. You're pretty good. Okay, less stress. I like you, Patrick. Oh, I'm really starting to open up. I love you, Patrick. Boy, I feel open. I feel receptive. Word, that's the next level of manifestation. And so now, you know, mirror work is something that I do a lot of. I say I love you, Patrick, to my own eyes in the mirror when I remember to. Mm-hmm. It's not every day, but it's more and more often I say I love you, Patrick, or I love you, man, if I'm feeling a little shy. But I love you, bro. But, you know, whatever it takes to kind of get over the sillies about it. But like I do. And more I'm unconditionally loving Patrick. And then action, right? That's manifesting in the world. And those are the things that we do. So for most people that are sitting in wherever they're sitting, they know that there is a next natural stress relieving thought they could have, like it's not so bad, right? It's not necessarily like I'm going to go and quit tomorrow. It could be like it's not so bad, but it's not the best thing for me. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, right. That's a next step. You know, okay, gosh, I'm curious. What skills do I have that I could offer somewhere else? Well, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do. Okay, gosh. What do I love to do out of those things that are my skills? I really love this. Gosh, okay, I'm curious. What other jobs out there do that? Okay, well, you know, and you just start to walk towards a more relieving state of being. And that's your purpose. And it will be like breadcrumbs leading you somewhere. And it's not, you don't just like find the loaf and then you're like, and you eat all the bread, right? You just are constantly following breadcrumbs home, right to your heart, right to who you are, because right in here, there's really nothing that you have to do, right? There's no, who's telling Guy to do something? Guy. He's the only one telling Guy to do anything. He's the only one that says, Guy, get out of bed. He's the only one that says, Guy, it's time to eat healthy. Or Guy, we're going to have another pint. Or whatever.
Totally, yeah.
And so, you know, that this whole idea that there's some external expectation and patterning and parental imprinting and all of that stuff, it's still our voice telling us what to do next. And so we just start to train that voice to say the next slightly relieving thing to ourselves is your purpose. It's not like, it's not in that job. It's not in that career. It's not in that industry. Maybe, but first it's likely in here and just starting to feel your own agency around I can generate relief with my thoughts, words, and my actions. I can generate that. I have agency.
Yeah, love it, mate. It what rings true. What I get from that and from my own things, a couple of things that spring to mind was I remember somebody always saying to me, the true act of meditation is what you do with your eyes open through your day. And yeah, and a lot of that is then coming back to, like you say, to bring yourself, be mindful, be more present to the moment and being aware. And from that place, you start to see things differently as you aspire to whatever direction you want to take yourself in, from leading with your heart. But if you don't allow that joy in the moment, I think we're always going to struggle. It's like a dangling carrot that we can never quite catch, and we're always chasing something. You know.
Well said. Definitely.
Yeah, incredible.
I would just want to comment on something that occurred while you were sharing that. To me, is that, you know, one of the things that's really interesting about this time right now is how understandable it would be if someone would totally turn their life upside down. Well, yeah, during COVID, I changed everything. Oh, you did? Oh, yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. What'd you choose? Well, I went this totally different direction. I went over here. And so for people listening and for us right now, you have a magic ticket that says all of the places you've been feeling obligated and shoulded, and all the ways that you know, all those expectations and all that sunk cost. You've already put all this money into an education. Now, what are you going to do with it? It's like, you could right now, more than almost any time in history, say, boy, COVID happened and I just questioned everything. Turns out I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. And you get a free, there's not a person on the planet that would go like, you dumbass, why'd you quit? Well, they'd be like, I get it, man. Everything was thrown up in the air. What are you going to do now? So we're at a very unique time to be having this conversation, because there is a green light to give up anything that isn't working. If you want to, you can make decisions today and be met with more compassion and like-mindedness, I think, maybe than any other time.
Yeah. Well, again, think it's just to touch on what you spoke on there. Indecision has been one of the biggest cripplers for me in the past, where I end up just being paralyzed or fearful into moving into the true self, if you like. That's wanting to come through. From your experience, why do you think we end up like from this paralysis from analysis? We just
excess calories. We've never been a species that has had it this easy. And so you're just not uncomfortable enough. And so you get to be indecisive. You know, it's, you know, when does an addict make a change? When his head actually hits the gutter, not when his head is falling towards the gutter and a pillow gets slid underneath it by, you know, and everybody's story is the same, but like by social services or by a family member. Again, it's like when we actually, bam, we make a choice. And, you know, comfort is the enemy of, you know, is greatness almost. You know, I don't know if that's exactly true, but it kind of feels like it could be pointing in that direction, where it's like, you know, you're not uncomfortable enough about the injustice to make a different choice. You're not uncomfortable enough with the state of your health to stop watching TV and go take a walk. You know, you're not uncomfortable with fill in the blank enough to ... And, you know, it's kind of like that situation where it's like, use your frickin' imagination and get more uncomfortable, because humans are fabulous at learning. Not fabulous. We learn a lot from pain, and we make adjustments from pain. And so I think that, like, why do people stay in careers that for a really long time that they really don't like, because it hasn't killed them. Hasn't killed them yet. And they're indecisive about leaving because it's not putting at risk their life. And if it were, they'd leave. Like if they said, I'm going to kill you if you don't quit your job, you'll be like, thank God I quit. But you know, we're surviving enough that we sit in our own filth, you know, our own crappy decisions.
It's like the frog analogy in the saucepan of water,
Yeah.
isn't it? You know, it just slowly
So
gets.
true.
Yeah. There's
So
one.
true.
Yeah. There's one. It just takes me back to even my time, because I spent a 5-year period, maybe even longer, where I was very uncomfortable, and you know what crystallized out of that was incredible. It really allowed me to grow in ways I'd never knew that was even within me, and I'm so grateful when I look back upon those times now, because it kind of helped me move into the direction and bring me closer to my heart, you know. It's just
Do
sometimes.
yeah, I was going to say, do you find yourself like representing the pain from that time to motivate you out of indecision now, or is that do you relate that?
Yeah, 100. It gives me context. It gives me huge context to what's going on now, and a much deeper appreciation of the simple things that are in my life right now that I can hold in my heart more on a daily basis, where they would have just shot straight past me back then, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So from that, I think that's been the biggest thing. But, you know, interestingly, there was an element of, it makes me smile as well, because I remember I was in this period where I had to cycle probably about 12 Ks every single day over these hills and into work, 30 minutes each day, 5-6 days a week. I didn't have hardly any money because I was investing into the stock trading, which I got horribly wrong. And there was all these things going on. And I remember it was willing to accept the moments where I was a fitness trainer, you know, my body ached. I had to get up at 5 a.m. It would be raining sideways and there was no option. I just had to get on this bike and cycle in over the hills in pain and wet. And I learned to really love it. I would end up like soaking up these raw, real moments that didn't require money. And then I would see the people on the buses that looked so miserable commuting to work. And my whole perception changed. And it allowed me to find joy in my struggles where I was at. It was an incredible time in my life. And that I carry with me to this day, you know, and that reference point for sure.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Love it.
I want to touch on one other topic before we wrap up the show, Patrick, and it's very relevant to me as well, about with Linda being 8.5 months pregnant as we do this podcast. But that's parenting, and you noted before about it being a spiritual practice, because what are we finding with my own company and what we're doing is the first obstacle is the kids, or they say, oh, I've got kids, I just don't find the time to do this or that or whatever. And it's a distraction. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, what an honor to be stewarding in a new being. You know, what an incredible thing. And if we just really kind of step back and pull ourselves away from what we think is important, and we actually look at the significance of you having been born, all the people that Guy has touched and talked to and hurt and helped and loved and hated, and just across the board, everything that you have brought and taken from the world by being embodied, you get how significant the job is, right? You get how significant the opportunity is to be a dad, to be a partner. And so much of what I think of as parenting is the same thing, which is the process or the opportunity, which is relationship. And so there certainly is a difference being a dad from being a husband. And there's a lot of it that feels really the same. And the same meaning from my perspective of you is that you are a masculine essence being who is born in a male body, gender-wise. But you have a more masculine essence than feminine essence, but you definitely have feminine essence, just like me and just like Linda has masculine essence, but mostly, as I know her, to be a feminine essence who identifies as a female. And so there's some archetypal pieces that really make it less personal. And one of the things about parenting is that it can become really personal. Like this morning, I walked upstairs and my 8-year-old daughter had gotten up, and her and I were the only ones up in the house, and it was early, but I'd heard she'd gotten up, and then I heard her go back to her bedroom, and I just kind of walked up there, and I walked in, and she's sitting on her bed with her book reading, and she does not acknowledge me when I walk in the room, and I walk right up and I lean against her bed, and she doesn't acknowledge me, doesn't look up, doesn't say anything, is just staring at her book. And I'm watching Patrick go, that little shit. When somebody walks in the room, what you're supposed to do is acknowledge them. That's what a good person does. They acknowledge them. And then what's more, if it's your father, you say, morning, Papa, and you give him a hug, because that's what I want. That's what I need. That's what makes me feel good. Nothing. So then I touch her knee, and all of this is going on inside of me, and I'm not showing it physically. For sure, something's being felt and transferred there. I touch her knee, and I just kind of rub it a second, and just zero, doesn't even blink, no facial, nothing. And I just like, okay, well, fine. She wants to be that way. I'll just leave. I'll just take my energy away, and that'll teach her. She'll soon be coming downstairs and giving me a hug because I took my energy away. And so I'm down there making my coffee. She's not coming down. She's not coming down. She doesn't come down. And I'm just watching this happen on the inside. And I'm saying to myself, this is really personal to me. This is not her stuff. This is my stuff. And I could transfer my stuff to her and snatch the book out of her hand and say, you better pay attention to me because that's what I need. But actually, it's really great that she's reading. It's really great that in her own way, she set a boundary. I want her to be able to set a boundary. And she focused her attention. And she knew that I was standing there staring at her. And she knows what that can mean and what I'm asking. And she still held a line. So on one hand, that could really be celebrated. But if I'm in my reaction that this is personal, I'm trying to make her more like what I need. And so pull that back and insert Cameron, my wife, and me. And there are 10,000 instances where I needed her to act a certain way so that I could feel a certain way. And at the beginning of the podcast, we talked about feeling joy from outside in versus feeling joy from inside out. And so if I'm looking for my child or my wife to cause something in me that I'm not bringing to the table as a self-generator, not wrong, not right, it's just something to be aware of. And so the analogy that I see is, as a masculine essence being, my job, I make it my job, I project it onto Patrick, is I'm going to hold a space for things to happen, upsets, emotionalities, challenges, victories, defeats, all the things, sadnesses, happinesses of our family dynamic. And I'm going to meet that as compassionately and lovingly as I can. And sometimes love means I'm going to give you a swat on the bottom, which I've done maybe 5 times in 8 years with my oldest daughter. And because it's gotten to a place to where you testing the boundaries of this container that I've created for us is starting to crack. It feels like I'm starting to lose it a little bit. And so I establish a different kind of boundary, which in that case of the 5 swats over 8 years is, I'm going to remind you that I'm the bigger entity in this relationship. And that has served to what? Oh, right. You're the dad. I'm the kid. You're bigger. Where you say set rules is a boundary that I get to choose to respect or not, and that there are consequences. And so I think that, from a spiritual perspective, what that is watching the dynamic of the family and myself as part of that from a third party perspective, and say, I want Patrick to have his emotions. I want Patrick to get angry if he gets angry. I want him to get frustrated if he gets frustrated. I want him to get happy. And I want him to continue to hold the container in which all of this happens in a loving way. And that's the spiritual practice, because it can be so easy to throw myself into, like this morning, forcing Gabriella because I can, because I'm the bigger person, because I've been here longer, because I know how you're supposed to act. And certainly that's my job. And sometimes I love just watching, wow, I'm freaking out right now a little bit in here. And I'm just going to walk away and let her have her experience. And just be a space holder as a parent. And it just makes such a difference. And the last analogy I'll leave with you is that I've found that children are state dependent learners. So what I mean by that is that when dad is around, it's a certain state of being, of mind, of awareness. And around dad, both kids were allowed to hit their head. If they were walking head down and they ran into the corner of the table, I wouldn't if they were running, it'd be one thing. But if they're walking and I could put my hand out or not, I would not put my hand out and let them hit their head. And very soon, from like 2 years old, 1.5 years old, they stopped hitting their head around me. Now, my mom, their grandmother, would never let them hit their head around her. And so much later, I would watch them, we'd be over at their house, and I'd kind of be watching from the side, and they would be interacting. And they kept hitting their head around grandma later into years than around me. Because pain teaches. And around grandma, they didn't have to have the agency to care for themselves that they did around dad. And Cameron was in the middle. And so this idea is that we raised our first child with a commitment that we would raise her like a second child, meaning we were over the glass kid, fear, like she's gonna break. It was like, no, you're gonna learn by falling, and I'm gonna stop you if you run towards the street. Okay, like I am my daughter's keeper, but you get to hit your head around me, and you'll become responsible for that.
Yeah, it's like you're teaching them how to choose for themselves, have responsibility for themselves, and grow from that place, which is such an empowering place, right? Because it's amazing. Yeah, I look forward to it all. I really do. It's going to be
awesome. We have such an amazing partner. You guys together make such a dynamic, powerful pair. Just so cool.
Yeah, thank you. We're very excited, and I feel very blessed. I really do. Yeah. Patrick, just to wrap up the show, I ask everyone a question, and literally that is, with everything we've covered today, is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners to ponder on?
Where do you know that you will experience relief from letting go, that you're still holding on?
Mm. Beautiful. Beautiful.
And please play with letting go.
Yeah. Yeah. Surrender for it's a good one.
It is. Oh, it's death, right? You're going to surrender one day. When you leave the body, there'll be a moment when you don't have a choice about it. And how you practice surrender today will inform how much you suffer when you don't have a choice.
Mm. Yeah, totally. Totally. I hear you, mate. If anyone wants to learn more about what you do, Patrick, where can I send them? What's the best place to go?
Thank you. Yeah, kindnesscollective.com is our yoga studios. And then we have a coaching program called Kindness Academy. And so we do live virtual coaching every week with a group of anywhere from 60 to 90 people, and do breakout sessions and go into various topics on a weekly basis. And so that's super fun. And then we have online virtual yoga classes from our studios that are available as well to stream.
Amazing. Patrick, thank you so much for coming on the show today, mate. I really appreciate your time, your wisdom, and everything you do. And yeah, I have no doubt. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you. High five.